All right, here comes the Christianity challenge. Can I find non-duality in Christianity? Can I find it in the Bible? I've quoted this stuff before in various places. Specifically, there's some incredibly potent and direct non-dual pointing in the Thomas Gospel, but considering that's not part of the actual Bible, even though it's historically probably as accurate or more than at least one of the synoptic or one of the Gospels, some considering it synoptic with Matthew, Mark, and Luke, some scholars. However, it isn't in the Bible. So the challenge is, can I find it in the Bible? Can I find it actually in one of the Gospels? So here we go. This comes from Matthew 25, 1 through 13. It's called the parable of the 10 virgins. All right. So this is very metaphorical. It's a very well-constructed myth, I think. But I think it really does point very clearly, and in many ways, actually, to this whole spiritual process, the unfolding process, the unbinding process, and make some really important points along the way. Anyway, it's kind of fun. So the parable is this: then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. Right? The virgins, right? Who are they? Well, in this allegory, they are spiritual seekers, right? They're the spiritual aspirates, those of us who quest for truth, those who are thirsty for deliverance from suffering, let's say. And they went to meet the bridegroom. Well, who's the bridegroom? Well, the bridegroom in this would be the Dharma, would be the truth itself, would be realization, Buddha nature, call it what you want, right? The kingdom of our Father, the kingdom of heaven in the Bible. So 10 virgins. Why is there 10 virgins? Well, this next part's really interesting. Oh, also, why are they virgins? This is fascinating. What does the virgin represent? The virgin represents innocence. It represents both the innocence of the one starting on the path, the innocence of the one who hasn't really taken those steps in the relative life yet. The one that's starting the hero's journey, who's just beginning. But also innocence represents the true innocence of realization that's always there. The ineffable truth of reality, the unfiltered experience of reality is rather innocent in experience. It's tremendously innocent, actually. All of nature is innocent in this way. So I think it's pretty cool that they use the term virgin, or that they use the archetype of virgin in this story. But the 10 virgins, why is there 10? Well, the next part explains it. 5 of them were foolish, naughty virgins, and 5 were wise. Well, why were they foolish and why were they wise? And why was there 5 in each sort of set? Well, I would argue that the 5 virgins, just like in other areas of the Bible, like the 5 palm trees and the 5 this and that, represent the senses, yeah? Just like at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, the 5 horses being pulled in were the 5 senses, yeah? So, and it explains here, 5 were foolish because they took their lamps, but they took no oil with them. And 5 were smart because they took flasks of oil with them. So what is this saying? To me, it's saying we have these 5 senses. We have these 5 sense gates, right? These lamps, so to speak. These portals to reality. These direct portals to the unbound, to the unborn, actually. But how do we use them, right? Do we use them wisely or do we use them foolishly? Now, the Bible is always going to kind of put a moral spin on things, but to take it out of the context of foolish and wise, I would just say skillfully, maybe, and unskillfully, or I should just say unconsciously and consciously, right? And there's no sin here in the way I look at things. It's just that mind identification causes us to use the senses in a very reflective way. We think what we're seeing, feeling, hearing, and tasting is actually what we're seeing, feeling, hearing, and tasting. It's not. It's the reflected version of it. We live in that house of mirrors of the mind, yeah? So we could say that's the equivalent of not bringing oil for your lamp, yeah? Bringing oil for your lamp, the wise, is to actually recognize the nature of the direct sensory experience. Now, what's interesting is this doesn't typically come until later in realization. you might get tastes of it, but even with First Awakening, often the true non-dual realization that is experienced, we could say through the senses, is not usually experienced, and not, if it is, it's very momentary. It's not an ongoing experience. So this comes later in realization. So again, like I've said many times, the Bible in some areas, or at least Christ in some of these Gospels, really does point to non-dual. He points to deep realization. Anyway, so it goes on. The wise took the flasks of oil with their lamps. And again, this is where it can get a little bit, I don't know, preachy, so to speak. I mean, it is the Bible, right? But it gets a little moralistic, I suppose. But it has some other points I think that I want to point out here. As the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and slept. Isn't that interesting, right? All of them became drowsy and slept. This is, to me, the allegory of mind identification. Like, yes, we all start on the same playing field in a way in life. We all start with an ego. We start very innocently, actually, but the formation of ego is sort of karmically wired, or say biologically wired into the system. And by the time we're 18 months old, we're already forming one, right? We're forming the basis of an ego, and then we form a very solidified ego and a world of mind identification. That's exactly what that is. Like, it sort of starts out as they're waiting for the bridegroom, as this is the beginning of life, waiting for that spiritual journey to present itself. The hero waiting for the hero's journey to present itself. That's one way of looking at it. But, the drowsiness and sleep is a really good allegory for being unconscious. There's another way we could look at this, which is kind of interesting, and that is there's a motif in the hero's journey where when we start to see that the goal, or at least a big milestone, is at hand, sometimes we actually get distracted. We can all relate to this. We get distracted suddenly. Suddenly what was so interesting to us is just not anymore. And this could be like hidden fear and those sorts of things. But there are so many allegories to this in various stories. So like in The Wizard of Oz, right, when they saw the Emerald City, they all fell asleep in the opium poppies, right? So you could also argue that, yeah, this is what happens before, like, we really have the opportunity to start to completely unbind. We feel the implications of what's happening as the spiritual journey is unfolding. All of a sudden, we get a little distracted, or we get a lot distracted. And I think this is maybe saying that in a sense. Yeah. So, and then it says, but at midnight there was a cry. Here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him, right? So this is maybe recognition. Yeah. Recognition, where something says, no, there actually is a living truth that's available to you, that you have access to, right? That happens in so many ways, in Buddhism, not necessarily Buddhism, but in the Buddhist context, it may happen one way. In the sort of Christian mystical context, it may happen a different way. But there's a cry, right? Something says, here it is. Come meet him. Come see it, right? Come find it. Come into contact with this. Yeah. And this kind of gets where, again, it gets moralistic. All the virgins rose, trimmed their lamps, and the foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the wise answered, saying, since there will not be enough for us and for you, go rather to the dealers and buy for yourselves. So this is interesting. So this also, to me, points to the illusion of time, and how time plays into fabrication, like mental fabrication, because the opportunity to use the oil in the lamps came already, right? But some of the unwise versions, like some people kind of say, oh, I'll wait, right? But this kind of says that there's no waiting. Like, waiting means never, right? Like, you either do it now or never. And that's the key. It's the whole thing with the seeker, that can be a whole storyline that just keeps going and going and going. I've been seeking for so long. I've tried everything. It's like, yeah, but what you're really trying is the same. And that is telling yourself the same story. When are you really willing to let go of all stories, including that one? Yeah. Which means letting go of time, which means letting go of, oh, I'll do it later. Yeah. It's right now. Awakening happens right now. Everything happens right now. Reality is right here and right now, not in time. Not in the story of the virgin who has to go back to the dealer to get more oil and come back and put the oil in the lamp, right? Because in a sense, you sort of miss that opportunity by taking a journey outside of this moment, or it's essentially a mental journey. It's not the spiritual journey, it's the mental journey. That's what keeps us from really accessing the spiritual unfolding that's not even a journey. It's right here and right now. Yeah. So I think that's what it's getting at. It's pretty interesting how it does it. And then while they were going to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. Right. Okay. Whatever. So they met the bridegroom through that investigation of the senses, because their lamps were lit, so to speak. Yeah. And then it says afterward, the other virgins came also, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered, truly I say to you, I do not know you. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour. Right. And this sounds, again, moralistic, and it's biblical. God is essentially saying, or the Lord or whatever is saying, no, you missed it. You missed it because you don't know the day or the hour, right? This is paradoxical, but I really feel into this, that what's being said here is you don't know the day and the hour because you are distracted with seeking. You're distracted with projecting this into time, with getting, bogged down in process, in what you have to do to get ready, and being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's like you're either here or you're not here, and that's it, But of course, it kind of turns into a moralistic story where then they're cast out of heaven or something like that. But I don't necessarily read into it that way. So anyway, that's the Christianity challenge. So can I find non-duality in Christianity? I do find it there. And specifically, I don't really think of it as, is Christianity non-dual? Just like I don't think of, is Buddhism or Hinduism non-dual necessarily, or something like that. It's more like the what Christianity is based on, which was Christ and the words of Christ, hopefully somewhat at least accurately translated and available to us in the present day, shows that he had not only non-dual insight, he was pointing to it, especially in the Gospel of Thomas. But again, this was in Matthew. So there you go. A little different than I usually do, but I thought it was kind of fun. What do you think? Am I making all that up, or is that true? What do you see?